One thing that never fails to amaze me is the sheer raw creativity displayed in anime and manga. From a gender-reversed lolly fighting for a laid-back lifestyle in a Nazi regime, to the bizarre race of the Namahate eking out a living in the alien world at the bottom of the abyss, to a time-travelling Japanese dude in the body of a Zia soldier fighting a solo guerrilla campaign to save the history books of her civilization against the Mongol invasion. Anime and manga are consistently creating some of the most original new concepts I've ever seen, and more importantly, actually using them to develop compelling narratives. While a unique concept may be a selling point, rather than relying on it as a crutch to just shit out a product that only has one unique concept going for it, in another world with my smartphone, many quality anime or manga develop meaningful and entertaining works from that concept. They incorporate it into a story that is, on its own merits, interesting and could stand on its own without the unique aspect, but when combined with it, creates some truly masterful works that are just an absolute pleasure to experience because they are so unlike anything you've seen before. This, I think, is a relatively exclusive aspect of anime and manga compared to other mediums, due in large part to the low barrier to entry allowing so many creative minds to just get their ideas out there, and also the unique combination of art and storytelling, allowing for creative visuals to be presented without the restriction of either having to describe them with text, as is the case of novels, or having to create them with technology, as is the case of movies and games, and the budget limitations that involves. That, or it is the sheer culture of creativity that Japan seems to breed. So many concepts they have that make their way into these mediums are either taboo or just simply nonsensical in a sterilized, risk-free Western media, which only serves to widen the gap in quality that at least I perceive between anime and manga, which are of course more prevalent in Japan, and everything else that is more prevalent in the West and the rest of the world. So, the barrier to entry for, I guess, manga, because anime is horrendously expensive, so not anime but manga, which most anime is adapted from, is relatively low compared to, say, movies and TV shows. You just need to know how to draw, and not even that good for some things. I mean, look at one. If you're drawing comedy, you can literally draw like a grade schooler and still get massively popular, though I will say that is probably the exception, not the average, and other genres don't necessarily share that exception, like good luck trying to get someone hard with garbage ecchi drawings. Now, drawing is damn hard to learn. Of course it is, I'm not saying it's not. There is still a barrier to entry there, but it is significantly low compared to most things because it is something you are able to do individually. You don't need a studio or company or multi-million-dollar budget behind you or anything. That's the point. You can also publish and share things iteratively, chapter by chapter, rather than needing to complete an entire book first, which just helps get you off the floor and into the public eye faster. Now, of course, there are also publishers in Japan that act as kind of gatekeepers, but just setting aside the option of self-publishing for now, which is another huge thing in Japan with all the self-publishing events like Comic-Con and stuff, even these publishers seem to be fairly open-minded. I mean, the series I mentioned at the start of this video were all officially published, despite how bizarre and out there they are. It doesn't look like these publishers are a particularly strict gate that squeezes the creativity out of everything. They seem to be almost the opposite. If they see something that is original and creative, they can promote it and really get it out there. Perhaps this perspective comes from the culture of creativity Japan breeds, but I'll get to that later. Right now I want to make the comparison to comics, because that would be the most similar parallel I can see in the West. There are, however, many differences that make it so comics, at least in my opinion, do not have the vast variety of creativity that manga does, and this stems mostly from the kind of environment and audience that has developed from the comic book industry, rather than the technical ability alone. Comics seem to be stuck in the rut that is superhero comics. It seems difficult to find any major comic in the West, apart from The Walking Dead, that is not based on a superhero tale, and this really restricts the scope of creativity that can be demonstrated. If the medium is stuck in a single genre, with publishers only desiring to publish that genre and the audience expecting that genre, it just puts prospective authors in a box that they cannot go out of. They have to draw within that box because that is what the industry basically operates completely within. Manga, on the other hand, spans genres as wide and various as there are that exists. Literally any idea seems to be possible to make into a manga, and we see exactly that with the sheer creativity and diversity of ideas demonstrated in manga. It's really unfortunate that the West has kind of fallen into this risk-free mindset, where everything has to cater to an existing audience that already has its expectations that need to be met, stifling the chance of anything truly new and ingenuitive to come out. Almost everything must follow the same tropes and appeal to the widest audience possible, and this just increases the more high budget the work becomes. It just really has put me off the majority of movies that come out these days, because once you see the beginning, you know exactly how it's going to go in the end. The experience just becomes predictable and monotonous rather than an exciting adventure. You don't know where it's going to go next, but sit eagerly on the edge of your seat waiting to be shown. Now, there is of course an exception to all this, which I want to get into next. Novels. They don't have a high barrier to entry. All you need to do is be able to write, which again is possible on your own on an individual level. And because of this, there should be an equally large variety of creativity here too, right? Kind of. Let's get into that. So, novels. They have a low barrier to entry. You just put words on paper, complete the book, and can even self-publish it if no publisher wants to take it up. So, given that my previous justification for the creativity displayed in manga was due in no small part to a low barrier to entry, shouldn't novels display a similar pattern? As I said, kind of, to a degree. While novels, and even manga, suffer like everything from genre oversaturation, they do also push the limits of creativity. Books like Lolita push against social boundaries and touch on topics that no large company would ever want to even prod with a 10-foot pole, let alone take the risk of investing significant money into. Such risky works get filtered out in other higher budget mediums, which is why we almost never see them. However, while they are pushing the boundaries of ideas, novels are also limited by the medium that they are, in terms of expressing creativity anyway. This being, they rely solely on the author's ability to describe scenes with text, to the degree that the reader can easily construct the image of the scene in their own mind. If the author cannot do this in a way that is both descriptive and entertaining at the same time, then the book is either just going to be monotonous to read because there's too much time spent detailing the setting or characters and thus isn't all that entertaining, or they can be not very visually descriptive, relying on the reader to formulate their own images of the setting and characters themselves. This careful balance limits the level of creativity able to be displayed, as there cannot be too much description on new things for fear of putting too much tedium on the reader. For example, take the Namahate in the Made in Abyss manga. In just a page or two, you can see they are all bizarre, strange creatures, with each individual being completely different from the next. Something like this would not translate the same way into writing. An author has two options to pursue to present such a scene. Either go into significant detail to describe each character in depth to give the same level of fidelity as a single page of drawings, which, as previously explained, would be incredibly tedious and monotonous for the reader, or describe a few key characters and then generalize and say they're all bizarre and otherworldly like that, relying on the reader's mind to fill in the missing details. While this does indeed work, and is what many great authors would do, it is just simply not the same as what a simple picture conveys. It turns from being a direct reflection of the author's creativity to relying on the imagination of the reader. I'm not saying this is exactly a bad thing, I'm just saying it is a different thing. It is not an equivalent to the level of creativity displayed in a page of drawings of the Namahate village. It's just something that visual art can do and writing cannot. There's of course the flip side to this. Manga relies significantly on the visual aspect. If a manga has too many pages and pages of text, it grows tedious to read, whereas in a novel this is expected. This just means these two mediums are better at different things. Manga for the sheer creativity it can display with art, and novels for the depth of ideas they can explore through their prose. And as always, there is an exception to these rules: light novels. Tanya, one of the examples I used in the introduction to this video, was adapted into anime and manga forms from a light novel, yet is so creative compared to what you would find in the West. I love using it as an example to highlight the creativity of Japanese mediums. If text isn't as good at creativity as manga, then what's this then? I would say that light novels and novels are very different mediums than one would at first assume. While they're both predominantly text-based, light novels supplement their descriptions with art. If you had trouble thinking of what a lolly Nazi would be, well, there's one right there next to the text. As in the case of the Namahate, if Made in Abyss was a light novel, there would no doubt be an image of the Namahate village presented at some point in the chapter so that the reader could visualize exactly what they look like and the diversity displayed within them on an individual level. This seems like a simple difference from regular novels, but do not assume that just because the difference is small, so is the impact. Just by adding a few images, pages upon pages of tedious descriptions can be avoided, completely changing the pace and entertainment value of a piece of work. It is simply the power of art, harnessed best by anime and manga, but also utilized by light novels, and it no doubt has no small part to play in the creativity we see within these mediums. Another thing that I believe contributes to the creativity displayed in anime and manga is the culture of creativity in Japan itself, which has allowed these mediums to flourish so much and is most likely why they are so popular there, but not necessarily in the rest of the world, at least not until recent years anyway. It's a little difficult to explain, but when I'm reading manga or watching anime, there is a lot of stuff that is normalized in it and that feels completely normal for someone so used to it like me, and no doubt so many other fans, but that I am aware would be seen as just bizarre from a regular Westerner's perspective. I don't think this is just from cultural differences. It's not that these themes are normal in real life Japanese society. Like, I'm pretty sure Japs think something like incest in real life is still pretty fucked up. It's solely seen within these mediums, like incest being a completely regular trope we see all the time in anime and manga, and that I think can only become normalized in this way by a culture surrounding it that values and accepts creativity. Things that the regular society would see as messed up, as taboo, as strange, are allowed to flourish in this medium and enjoyed for the irregularity that they are, so much so that they become a regular theme, ironically, which I am sure is because Japan has a culture of creativity, because I just don't see the same pattern happening in the West. Again, I'm having a bit of trouble explaining it coherently here, but as an aspiring writer myself, there are certain stories I feel the desire to write, heavily inspired by some of the stuff I've read in manga, but I immediately feel a pushback when I actually go to do so because I catch myself and think, this seems normal to me, but the main audience of anything I would produce would be Western readers. And would this be normal to them? Would anyone actually read this? Would it even be something they could understand enough to follow? For example, how would Western readers react to a novel about a gender-flipped lolly in a setting akin to World War II, straight up dominating the other side? You ever see a movie with a kid going on killing sprees, completely destroying everyone else, or heard of a novel that has anything remotely close to that? I certainly have not, and it just sounds batshit insane to me to even consider writing something like that. Whereas in Japan, someone not only tried it, they got through the gatekeepers, got published, and it became so popular that they got both an incredibly high quality manga drawn and a mainstream anime produced. This, I believe, is a product of their culture of creativity. There's no hesitation as to what to produce because it seems literally anything can be a success, no matter how bizarre and strange it may sound, no matter how much it pushes against those taboos of society, and even if it's so completely out there no one has even thought of it yet. Perhaps someone in the West did think of a gender-flipped lolly Nazi fighting in something akin to World War II, but they didn't go through the massive effort of writing an entire book about it because they were no doubt discouraged by the fact that no one would take it seriously because it just sounds completely fucking absurd. Yet, this actually happened in Japan, and it's just what I love so much about the medium and the country that's created it and allowed it to flourish so much. Now, just a few notes for an addendum on the end. While I said literally anything can be successful, that's not to say that getting published in Japan is not notoriously difficult, as it is so often portrayed in anime and manga. Publishers no doubt filter out a plethora of work that we never get to see, but that doesn't mean the end result isn't still anything but so much more creative than the West. We will never know what we didn't get to see because of the gatekeepers, but at least they are lenient enough to let through things we would never get a remote chance of seeing in the West. On another note, I want to say that, of course, there are also traces of the Western style of risk minimization in Japan as well. I'm not so blinded by infatuation that I think it's not infected by this bullshit either. We constantly see popular genres get completely oversaturated with low-effort clones within a few years of them blowing up. Isekai, dark magical girls, being trapped in a game, etc, etc. You get the point, but I think it's nowhere near the level of cancer that it is in the West. It's not to the degree where it infests everything down to the very structure of the narratives themselves, like in every Hollywood action flick ever, or to the tone of work needing to be child-friendly to maximize the audience it appeals to. They haven't got that bad yet. And while the shit that gets thrown at the wall grows larger every year, the variety of genres is so damn wide there's always going to be options out there that don't conform to the sterilizing risk-free mindset that leeches creativity out of everything. And because of the low barrier to entry, there's constantly going to be fresh ideas coming out that will hopefully hopefully offset the development of such a mindset enough so that it never takes over completely. I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. With the ever-growing attacks on the anime industry coming out of the West, and indeed with the power of Western companies like Crunchyroll and Netflix growing, that will no doubt look to start exerting their influence on the anime industry alongside those voices, this will certainly be an interesting journey to watch. But for now, I'm just enjoying the sheer creativity coming out of these mediums, and I hope you, dear viewer, do too.